Freeman, if you'll state your name and say present.
Isaac Freeman, present.
Stephanie Elizalde, present.
Benita Reese, present.
Julie Sandell, present.
DeMarcus Ranger, present.
Lou Blackburn Jr., present.
Shirley Isa Newsom, present.
Ron Oliver, present.
Bob Weiss, present.
Jerome Garza, present.
Jeff Veazey, present.
Edwin Flores, present.
Kevin Melanson, present.
Having determined that there is a quorum, the meeting is now officially in order. I want to, before we go any further, recognize our legal team, Mr. David Thompson and Lisa McBride, if you'll raise your hand. Their role tonight will be to answer points of law and in fact, and are here as a resource. And I appreciate their making the trip to Dallas. The next order of business is the approval of the minutes. You will notice there's an A and a B. The first one under A is for January 5th, and then under B, there were some calendaring mistakes in the minutes which are needed to be corrected. And I want to thank Mr. Harris and his staff for doing that, but we will need a motion to approve both items A and B. Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Flores, seconded by Commissioner Veazey, that the minutes of January 5th, 2015, the minutes that have been subject to correction of November 17th, December 1st, and December 15th of 2004, been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Motion carries unanimously. This gets us to item number 4. And as I've mentioned, and as we've discussed on January 5th, we agreed to put on the agenda basically action items. And I want to go over how I view the meeting being run and what is proposed. In item number 4A, I'm going to read into the record a resolution whose conclusion will be that we don't want to do a charter. And the way we will do that, I will lay that out, ask someone to move that, someone to second that. And if that is accomplished, then whoever is in support of it, voting yes, will speak. And unlike how I've run the meetings, anyone in opposition will go next, and then in support, and then in opposition, until we have exhausted ourselves. We don't have a time limit on this motion. There is no rule that says you have to speak, but obviously I want to make sure if you want to be heard, that you are heard. At the end of that discussion, we are going to take a recorded vote. I will ask you by name to say yes in support of the motion or no if you're opposed to it, and the majority obviously will prevail. And the next item, B, will be a consideration of the development of recommendation and suggestions leading to a summary report. I will read the motion. If someone will move it and someone seconds it, we will have the same rules. Someone who supports going forward with recommendations and suggestions that could lead to a report will speak to it. Anyone opposed will say, raise your hand and I will recognize you. We will go back and forth until that conversation is exhausted. And the chair will only gently rule if we are repeating ourselves and I see you getting restless. But I will yield is what time you feel that you would like to have to make your case. And the third item, which was requested, is going to be a discussion and approval to reconvene our work groups. There were 4 of them, and we need to say we're going to do them for the record and then get some dates. Regardless of the first 2 motions, we are going to, and I will propose and am proposing on the agenda that we move forward with those groups so that we would report out on mid-February. So, and I will end, depending on the hour of the night, with very, very short remarks. With that, are there any questions on how we'll move forward? If not, let me, yes?
Just
Yes.
a point of clarity here.
Yes.
But if in item A, it's resolved that we aren't going to write a charter,
Right.
then would then we even go to PC?
Yeah, the chair has determined that we still have the ability, in consultation with our attorneys, to write recommendations and suggestions that don't have to be a charter, that we can move forward. At the point when we have developed those, there would probably be a discussion whether we're in agreement or not, and then vote at that time to advance them. So the purpose of this motion under B is to simply gain agreement in a majority way to advance recommendations and suggestions that could lead to a summary report. The motion will state very clearly that it's not the intent to create a charter. It should not be construed. All we're doing is agreeing that we want to keep working, if there's a majority, to advance recommendations, suggestions in some report form as a work product at the end of our mission here.
So may I follow up with that, or is this going to be part of the consideration, is to get input from legal counsel
Yes,
on whether or
yes,
not we can do that?
yes, under the item. I was just foreshadowing that it's on there because I asked to see if we could do that. But for the record, we will do that. If you have a legal question, I think that if you will direct it to me as a point of inquiry, then I will direct the attorney rather than a crosstalk, especially during the debate and the discussion of the motion. So, are there any other inquiries before I read item A? Okay. Oh, yes, Ms. Newsom, I'm sorry.
I'm just curious if we need to get clarification from the attorney before you read item A, if we will be in order to go forward with the recommendations.
To do a charter? Okay. Mr. Attorney, would you, Mr. Thompson? This is Mr. Thompson. The question has been posed, is item A in order to go forward with this vote? This item for discussion and vote?
Mr. Chair, Ms. McBride and I have reviewed that specific question at your direction. We thought it might come up this evening. And it is our advice and opinion to you that it's ultimately the discretion of the commission whether to develop a charter or not. And I want to read the particular language of statute to you that I think is the question. It's section 12.015 of the Texas Education Code, subsection C. Subsection C says the Charter Commission must complete a proposed charter not later than the first anniversary of the date of its appointment, period. After that date, the commission expires and the appointment under section 12.014 is void. Now, obviously, the word must is used, and I want to point out, as a matter of statutory construction, you don't have the traditional shall and may. It is a must, which is a mandatory term, and I guess the open question is whether the focus of that is on you must develop a charter, whether you like it or not, or whether the point is on the time period that you must do it within a year if you are going to develop a charter. Our analysis, and I will say there's no legislative history as such on this, but if you think about it this way, statutory requirements that are in fact mandatory, what is clear about their mandatory nature is that there's a consequence. You shall do this, or something else happens, somebody else steps in to do it, or something of that nature. In this particular statute, the focus, we believe, is on the time period of 1 year. It says you must do it within a year. At the end of a year, if you haven't done it, your commission expires, and this commission simply goes out of existence. We believe that's the actual focus of that particular section. And indeed, the only consequence of you not developing a charter is simply the expiration of your commission. There's nothing in statute that says someone else then steps in and takes up the baton or anything of that nature. So, as we said at one of our earlier meetings, we think the contemplation of statute is that the commission will work diligently and in good faith. You have been entrusted with a responsibility, and our analysis of the time and effort that you've spent doing that this fall certainly is an indication that you've taken that responsibility seriously. But we do believe the statute, if you do not move forward with a charter proposal, The consequence is simply ultimately at the end of a one-year period that the commission expires and that's the end of the effort.
Okay,
So we do believe the motion is in order.
okay.
Mr. Chair, could you
Yeah.
ask one other clarification?
Yes, please.
Could you ask the attorney if there was any interpretation that the firm made about the automatic termination of the commission's existence if we made a decision one way or another? Would that terminate it? I think he just said he would not, but I just wanted to
No,
make sure.
so do you understand the question? I mean,
Mr. Chair, I do understand the question. And
thank you, Commissioner Ranger.
Great question, one we had anticipated. Lisa, correct me if I mistake. Our reading of the overall statute is that you are appointed for a term of 1 year. And we believe as a technical matter, whether you vote tonight to move forward with developing a charter or not does not end your term. Your term is prescribed by statute. Now, you might choose not to meet anymore. That's certainly your prerogative, or you might choose to keep meeting if you have other things to work on. But, Mr. Ranger, our reading of the statute is that your term ends when it expires, not at some point prior to that. We don't see anything in statute or admittedly in the relatively sparse legislative history that would bring it to an immediate termination.
Commissioner Sandell.
Am I supposed to have a paper copy of what we're going to be voting on?
Yeah, I'm going to pass it out as
Okay,
soon as
just-
we're
I just want to
done.
look at it when
Yeah.
I read it.
Yeah, I got it. Got it right here, just waiting for,
Got it.
so we don't get distracted. Are there any other clarifying questions before we, yes, Commissioner Ranger.
Just might be out of order, but I saw on a blog this week an inquiry by a citizen in District 6 about the transparency of the commission. And, you know, I was trying to find some of the audios of the, or videos of the work groups, subcommittees, whatever that title might be. Are any of those up on the website? The documentation is there, but I was wondering if any of those.
Yeah, good. Let me just say, we have just started loading all of that Friday afternoon, and it's a work in progress.
So it's not there?
Yeah, as of Friday, we were still loading stuff, so I didn't check as of today, but.
They're there?
They're there. Thank you, Mr. Harris. So, thank you. That was going to be the substance of my remarks at the end of the meeting. So you have now shortened the meeting by, 3 minutes. Our erstwhile website is now no longer erstwhile. It's up. If you go to it, it has a navigation piece that says documents. And we are busy trying to get everything we've collected up, and we are making great progress. All glory to Mr. Harris, who I didn't realize knows how to upload documents. I told him I wouldn't touch it, and I want to thank him and his staff for getting that done and commend you to doing that. The web address or URL is www.homerulecommission.com. So, and there is a link also from the DISD page, our old page. So, with no further ado, let me just,
Mr. Chair,
yes, ma'am.
at the risk of not asking this question, I'm still going to ask
No,
it.
please.
Let us presume that the commission reached, in either direction on 4A,
Right,
a majority, but the commission continued to meet.
right.
Could a subsequent revote on the same question come up later, prior to the expiration of the commission? That's the question I have.
Yeah, so that's both procedural, that is, we're voting not to do it, that's what the proposition will be, and then, we'll take an up and down vote tonight. And as I understand your question, what can be brought back if it's defeated? That is, there's a majority that says we reject the proposition. It leaves us kind of hanging. We still move forward on B hypothetically. What happens to the recommendations at B? Because the way the motion will be worded is not to be construed as a charter. If I understand your question, what then is the order that could bring back a motion to do a charter? Am I understanding your question? And I would see if Mr. Thompson wants to opine on that.
We have also looked at that question, thinking it might come up tonight. Because the commission has a term that does not end for 1 year, your actions as you move forward with your deliberations and discussions, you can evolve and you can change your position either individually or as a commission at whole. So if there were a vote tonight to not move forward to develop a charter, and several months from now, because of changed circumstances, the commission wanted to reconsider that issue. We believe you could do that. Now, obviously, you would have to consult Robert's rules at that time. Is this a new action? Is it an action that would have to be advanced by someone who voted with the majority in the first hearing, et cetera, et cetera? So there are details that would have to be, obviously, from a procedural standpoint to resolve. But just as the broad question of, does this preclude you from continuing to discuss for the remainder of your term? It's a statement of whichever way the commission votes, it's a statement of your position today. You could, as a commission, advise that during the remainder.
It's going to be the chair's intent to follow Robert's rules when we are, if someone wants to reconsider. We got that little book at the beginning, consult it, you have to be on the prevailing side, there's a time period. But again, I want to be clear to each of you, there are two separate votes tonight. I did not link them when I put the agenda on. I wanted to respect the first item, which was suggested by a commissioner, and then the second one, which many of you indicated you wanted to advance recommendations and suggestions short of a charter, so the motion will be worded that way. You will have a chance tonight to take two votes. And then the third, which I think we have a consensus on, is we're going to be in our work groups and report out. I want to welcome Commissioner Gutierrez. Would you say your name and present?
Danae Gutierrez, District 8, present.
And present, okay.
Commissioner Mendez.
Oh, Mr. Mendez, I'm sorry.
Ricardo Mendez, present.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, I'm going to just ask you to, this is item 1. And if I made too few copies, just if you look at each other, I'm going to read it into the record. And it's, whereas, so this is item 4A, consider resolution regarding development or adoption of home rule school district charter. Whereas the Texas Education Code, section 12.011, authorizes a school district to adopt a home rule school district charter under which the district will operate, and whereas the Texas Education Code, section 12.014 states, quote, the Board of Trustees shall appoint a charter commission to frame a home rule school district charter if 1. The board receives a petition requesting the appointment of a charter commission to frame a home rule school district charter signed by at least 5% of the registered voters of the district, quote, and whereas on June 19, 2014, the Dallas ISD Board of Trustees nominated and appointed 15 residents of the district to serve on the Dallas ISD Home Rule School District Charter Commission in accordance with the Texas Education Code, section 12.015, and whereas the Dallas ISD Home Rule School District Charter Commission has conducted public hearings throughout the geographic area of the Dallas ISD, including at least one hearing in each trustee district, and whereas the Dallas ISD Home Rule School District Charter Commission has received presentations and information from 5 of the 9 elected trustees and has provided an opportunity for all trustees to provide information to the commission, and whereas the Dallas ISD Home School Rule District Charter Commission received a presentation from Superintendent of Schools Mike Miles, and whereas the Dallas ISD Home Rule School District Charter Commission has received presentations from individual community members and elected officials and from community groups and organizations, including Support Our Public Schools, SOPS, our Community Hour Schools, Dallas Friends of Public Education, Stop the Takeover, Dallas NAACP, League of Women Voters, former Dallas Achieves representatives, Dallas School Administrative Association, Alliance, AFT, NEA Dallas, Association of Hispanic School Administrations, Dallas Regional National Alliance of Black School Educators case, and whereas the Dallas ISD Home Rule School District Charter Commission has the sole discretion and authority to determine whether to develop and adopt a proposed home rule school district charter. I'm going to read that one more time. Whereas the Dallas ISD Home Rule School District Charter Commission has the sole discretion and authority to determine whether to develop and adopt a proposed home rule school district charter. Now therefore be it resolved that the Dallas ISD Home Rule School District Charter Commission determines not to develop or adopt a proposed home rule school district charter. I'm going to read that one more time since I stumbled. Now therefore be it resolved that the Dallas ISD Home Rule School District Charter Commission determines not to develop or adopt a proposed home rule school district charter. And the second page is that it would be adopted and then attested to by our secretary. Now that I've laid it on the table, is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, it's been motioned to approve by Commissioner Ranger and seconded by Commissioner Vesey. So let me I'll get to you just a minute, Commissioner Flores. So the way I would like to proceed is those who are in support of this speak, and then anyone who's opposed to it speaks. I have not put a time limit. I would just ask that with respect to all our evening that we, try to keep our remarks on point, but I am not setting a time limit for any statement for or against. Commissioner Flores?
Oh, there's a typo.
Yeah, there's a typo, and I'm going to be subject. It should be administrators, not administration. That one's on me. So we'll let that for the record stand corrected. Who would like to speak for the motion first? Commissioner Ranger, please.
I'm going to be extremely brief. I would just like to explain that when the resolution was written, it really just simply attempted to track the language that was directly included in the original resolution adopted by the Board of Trustees. The whole first section, that's where it came from. It was just tracking that language. And then the second portion of the resolution, it was simply tracking exactly what the commission itself had done, all the hearings we had held, all of the participants, all of the people that presented, all the attempt to get participation, etc., and to take the position as pointed out in the resolution by the board that we have the sole authority to charter or not to charter Dallas ISD. So it was not, there was nothing, intentionally there was nothing added beyond just a description of what the Board of Trustees had done and what we had done in attempting to get public input into this process. And from where I stood one night, very early in the morning, all night long really, it just seemed to me that we had been sort of pointed towards this particular period. We're now into 7 months, one day. On June the 19th, I think was the date that the Board of Trustees adopted that resolution. This is January the 20th, one day after the Martin Luther King holiday. So for me, it was just, I attempted to stay away from my ideological thoughts. I attempted to stay away from arguments and all of that kind of thing. It was just intended to be a description. This is where we are. The input is clearly, in my opinion, overwhelmingly suggested there is no base of public support for this. There was a infusion of financial support in order to get a certain process started. But in fact, the hearings and what I saw, and I attended every one, I was there, I did not hear any outpouring of support for this process. So the effort was just intended to present to you the opportunity to make the decision 7 months and 1 day after beginning. Now, in my opinion, I'm going to stop. We cannot serve two masters. Somewhere it's written, you cannot serve two masters. I believe with all my heart in public education. It's what got me from the west side of Fort Worth in a very low-caste neighborhood. And every school I ever attended under the current reform agenda would have been closed. Every teacher I ever had in a segregated system, I'm sure would have been found deficient. So when I think about education, I want it to be here for students in the future, for the next generation, and to me that means a neighborhood school. So that's my bias. I love neighborhood schools, and I would like us to continue to develop them. I don't want children used as pawns. I don't want dollar signs put on students. I don't want teachers beaten down. So I have those concerns, but basically I'm saying on the record it appeared to me that we had a clear record of public opposition to this particular initiative, and this was intended simply to document that and give us an opportunity to make this decision at this point. I'll stop.
Thank you. Anyone opposed who would like to speak now?
I have a question.
Yes.
I guess point of clarification.
Yes.
This might be a really silly question.
No question silly tonight.
This might be my overanalyzing here, but what happens if again, clearly no one's speaking the opposition, so maybe this is a silly question, but what happens if the resolution fails? Like, what, are we bound to do anything at that point, or is it simply just saying, I don't think we should not produce one, which I know is a double negative?
Nothing happens, we go on to the second one.
So, I'm just for my own clarification.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
cool.
Who else would like to speak in favor of it? If you'll just raise your hand, I'll recognize you. Commissioner Isom-Newsom.
First of all, I'd like to thank Commissioner Ranger for putting pen to paper so that we would have something to consider, and for putting it pen to paper so very well. I have looked at this, as Marcus has noted, for 7 months, have read everything that I could get my hands on to try to determine what would be the best course of action for the children of Dallas. Because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. What is in the best interest of the children, not the adults. I have found no benefit for the children or for teachers in a charter. And what I do believe is that many parts of any charter undercuts the democratic process of this country. I find that any charter, one that was proposed to us, that would have folks who did not vote people into office to take them out of office, undercuts the basic principles of a democracy. I therefore cannot in good conscience vote for a charter. That concludes my remarks, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Sandell.
I am, like Mr. Freeman, trying to make sure I understand this. If I do not wish to say yay to this resolution, I am not saying we're going to write a charter. I'm saying I don't want to say we're not going to write a charter right now. It does not tell us we have to have a charter. Is that correct?
Well, we're not voting affirmatively for a charter.
I know.
But I will return to Mr. Thompson's comments. In the absence, it's a term issue, and it can time out without any resolution.
Okay.
And it will be, if you think of it that way, think of the next one, if you want to do something, but not a charter. That's why I put a second item on the agenda.
Okay.
Anyone else who wants to speak in opposition? Does anyone else want to speak in favor of the resolution? Commissioner Beasley?
Yeah, I have one short thing I just would like to say that by voting for this resolution and voting to not write a charter, that I don't believe that any commissioner here is voting for the status quo in DISD. I believe that all of the commissioners and all of the public input that we have had have contributed just tremendously to the discussion, and I believe that those will be part of the recommendations if we go that route. But I think that it's really important for the dialogue in this city to stop with calling us supporters of the status quo. Maybe I'm a little sensitive to the outside influences, but I know the hard work and the seriousness with which all the commissioners have taken this, and I support the I support this resolution.
Is there anyone else in opposition? Remember, we're going back and forth tonight.
I am in opposition.
Like Mr. Flores,
Hold on, I'll let-
are you yielding to Ms.
Yeah,
Sindel? Are you,
I, again, a point of clarification.
yes, ma'am.
There is no charter. There is nothing. We've been given paperwork by somebody that's got nothing to do with us. So it's not like whatever we'd be doing, we'd even incorporate anything they had to say in it. That may be what the supporters of that want to do, but we...
What is your question?
My question
Speak to
is,
the motion, please.
if we agree to write a charter, are we bound to whatever paperwork they've given us as a suggestion?
Now, we are, in the resolution states, an independent act at our sole discretion. Let the chair rule that.
Okay.
Okay? Is there someone in opposition or in support? We're in opposition?
Mr. Flores.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Well, I
Mr.
I
Flores.
still have a legal question.
Yes.
Mr. Chair. So, if we vote in favor of the motion, which is to basically say we're not going to write a charter,
Yes.
then we really have no reason for being. Because the statute, and this is where it would be good to get some input. I mean, there was a petition put forward by citizens, by a very large number of citizens, that said, y'all need to write a home rule charter. And the statute says, these are the rules of how you create this home rule statute. And so, the commission. And so we were created under that statute based on that.
What are you trying to clarify? Can you help me here?
Well, if we vote in favor of this motion and
Yeah.
say we're not going to write a charter, then our work is done. There's
Well-
nothing else we can do.
Well,
I mean, we have no
Are
authority.
you asking that? Please.
Do we or do we not have authority to have recommendations versus, because if we
Okay, so-
vote and say we're not going to do a charter.
So here's what I'm
the
going
question
to
is,
rule.
How can we continue to exist?
Yeah, and I appreciate it. Here's what I'm going to, that I think I'll take up on item B before we get going to clarify that, to speak to that. Right now, it's either for or against or a clarification on the motion. So I will get back to you on that, all right? Because it's a divided vote. Let me finish. It's a divided vote. So if you're asking, do we have the authority to write recommendations if under item A, is that the point of law you're asking?
No, the point I'm asking is that if this resolution passes,
Yes.
that says we are not, this commission is not going to write a charter, then it ends our work.
Well-
There's nothing else we can do, and it has a bearing, that's my position.
Well,
It has a bearing on my vote, because I may vote against it or for it, based on the answer to
Okay,
that
I'm going to ask
question. So if I
Mr.
could ask-
Just Mr. Thompson, and then Ms. Newsom.
He may answer my question.
Yeah.
Lisa and I have looked at that issue. We think it's a very good question. Obviously, the specific statutory authority of the commission is to actually develop a proposed charter that would then make its way through the commissioner's review and the Secretary of State's review, ultimately an election in Dallas ISD. Here's sort of the way Lisa and I have looked at this. The commission is appointed for a term. And think about it this way. The purpose of a charter is to deviate from current law. That's the whole point of a charter, is to allow VISD to operate under laws or rules other than those generally applicable to school districts. And it's the only way to get to that particular conclusion is through a formal charter. Now, frankly, you are appointed for a term, so your term still exists until June. There is nothing in the statute that would preclude you from then developing recommendations that are within current law that you simply want to forward to the Dallas ISD board for its consideration. Now, obviously, they don't have the force of a charter. They don't trigger any consequences. No one has to do anything with them. If the board received them and says, thank you very much, we choose to not even read these, that would be the board's prerogative. But if the commission wishes to conclude its work by taking all of the comments and the various input you've received and passing that on in the form of some helpful recommendations, we don't see anything in statute that specifically would preclude you from doing that. Obviously, it doesn't trigger any sort of process that requires a response by the Dallas ISD board, but we don't see a prohibition on the board, on the commission, undertaking to reduce some of what you've heard to writing in the recommendation.
Commissioner Newsom.
That answered my question, because I didn't see anything in the law that would preclude it. Thank you.
It's silent. It truly is
Yes,
silent.
thank you,
with regard
thank you,
to that.
Attorney Thompson.
Commissioner Garza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be supporting the motion in front of us tonight. We have done extensive public hearings. We've heard from a number of organizations, teachers, we've heard from students, we've heard from administrators. I think what I'm hearing from the community now is they're ready for this commission to make a decision one way or another. And if we are going to write a charter, it's going to take hundreds of hours and a lot of legal expertise to move forward. So the timeline, if in fact we're going to do that, is very, very short. So I think it's an appropriate time at this time to either make a decision, do we write one or do we not write one? And if we do, we start working backwards from, what's the date, Mr. Ranger? June
19th.
June 19th, and saying, okay, this is how many hours a week we are going to have to spend in order to do that. And I think it's an appropriate time to do that. I think the resolution in front of us is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in opposition?
I actually have another point. I guess I'd really prefer not to think about how much time it's going to take me to do something, whether I decide it's a good idea or not. I mean, whether this is time, it takes forever, well, it takes forever if that's what we decide. I'm saying that the time frame does not change my opinion.
No, I'm just asking you to,
Okay, I didn't have a question.
You're clarifying if time
Thank you.
is an issue.
Because I'm
Right,
confused.
so that is your own issue.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone, all I can say is time is on your side or not. I'll
I
start
know.
singing and
Just-
destroy the meeting. Is there anyone in opposition, anyone else in support who'd like to make a comment?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Nellens.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to state for the record, I do support this resolution. Thank you, Commissioner Ranger. I just feel strongly that we have done our due diligence. We've spent a lot of time listening to the community. I've done a lot of study myself, and I have to vote my conscience on this, and I support the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in opposition? Anyone else who would like to speak for it? You don't have to. Commissioner Blackburn?
Sure. I just want to ask, is this similar to the question you asked at our last meeting of, do we feel like we have enough information to definitely say we don't want a charter?
No, this is straight up and down based on what you think you know tonight, now, to take a vote, yes or no.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else who would like to say something? That was an inquiry. A pose for Commissioner Forrest?
So I'm just gonna, point out that if, this is really a go, no-go vote, as far as I'm concerned. We're either
It's
gonna
your
go,
opinion.
that's my opinion.
Yes, it's your
That's my
opinion.
opinion. My opinion is that this is, we either do this or we don't do this. And the likelihood, in my opinion, that, the trustees would pay any attention to any recommendation that we come up with is, well, who knows what it is. But, a lot of people signed petitions saying, y'all should write a charter and put it before us. We had hearings, and spent a lot of time on those, listening around the community. And if we do decide to go forward with a charter, let's say that we write it, and miraculously we can get 8 votes to agree to some kind of charter within the next month or 6 weeks. Well, then we're going to have this piece of paper that we say, okay, this is what we're going to now have more community meetings for, get input from the lawyers, get out there and then maybe have to come back and revise it based on all this community input that we're gonna, does anybody disagree that we're not gonna get more community input and have more hearings once this magic document is created? I mean, I'm with Jerome that let's understand that it's gonna be a lot of work, which I'm not afraid of doing, and I'm ready to do it and willing to do it. And we will have to basically back plan from June 19th, all of the steps that we have so methodically followed to this day. But going forward, I think it's going to be a sprint.
So you're saying you support the motion?
I'm merely pointing out what I foresee, that if this motion doesn't pass, that we're going to have to be ready to really batten down the hatches and do some really hard work, which again, I'm willing to do. I think that the folks that, for whatever, whichever reason you believe signed or didn't sign the petition, and whichever motivation, support that they had, they did sign. And they were turned in, and they were verified as, voters within the district, and that is a voice that...
Point of order,
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman?
yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
So I'll just...
Are you finished?
Yes.
Okay. I was going to ask, was that in for or
I
against?
had no idea.
And I didn't think Solomon would make an appearance, but this chair is prepared to call a vote at some point. Commissioner Newsom.
Yes, just before I call for the vote, I do want to note that while we had many citizens to sign the petition, we did have many citizens come before this commission to give us their best thoughts and their best hopes for what would happen with this district for their children. And I don't think that we need to undercut that input in any manner. Having said that, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Now, excuse me, Chair.
Yeah, can I just recognize Commissioner?
Yes.
I just want to, does anyone else have a comment to make before I say anything? I'd like to be last.
Okay. Commissioner, now we are speaking in favor. All right, we're on the favor side. Commissioner.
Yes, I think the commission has done a very good job of coming with opposite views. There's been a lot of juxtaposed positioning on how we feel about things. And I think that the district is better for what we've done. That's just my opinion. And I feel that at this point, I think we do need to make a vote, and we need to make a clear decision where we're going. And if we decide to go forward and have recommendations, I think that's very good for the district, the community. People can throw them in the trash can. I really don't care. But you know what? I want to walk away from this knowing that, quite honestly, we did everything we could to help every child in this district. This district is a strong district. It has great people in it. It has great teachers, great community leaders that assist it. I saw yesterday in one of the churches in South Dallas, they were looking for mentors to work an hour a week or an hour a day for the next year. So there's a lot of great things going on. And by no means should we just start destroying Rome before we know what we're doing. So I think we've done everything we can to this point. A vote is a positive. It lets the community know where we stand. And I think going forth, it's the right thing to do.
Who has not been heard would like to speak in opposition? Or anyone in favor?
I don't think we should be discounting, or that we are discounting any of the data we've collected by our vote. I think we're all intelligent individuals, and we were selected to nonetheless cast our own votes based on the information we gathered. So whether it was petitions, whether it was individuals that came and spoke to us, whether it was presentations that were made, that was what we were tasked to do. And we are each here individually to arrive at our own conclusions. And sadly, it seems like this seems to be a split either for or against.
Yeah.
And if we're not in favor of a charter, that automatically means we're not reform-minded. And I would beg to differ with that comment in regard to simply by saying no to this does not mean, again, as Commissioner Veazey indicated, that we're satisfied with the status quo. And for someone to misinterpret certainly my vote and add something to it, I think is a disservice to the entire commission if that's done to each of us, regardless of what side of the resolution we are. This is, after all, as Commissioner Ranger pointed out early on, a democracy. And it does come down to a vote. So I will be voting in favor of the resolution. And I will be saying no, which I think also requires courage to say no to.
Is there anyone else in opposition who'd like to speak to it? Is there anyone else we have not heard who's in favor? Again, this is not the chair's normal way of kind of cajoling each of you. If you do not want to speak, you do not have to. I'm looking around the horseshoe, those who have not spoken. If you don't, that's fine. You'll be able to cast a vote. I think Commissioner Ranger had the floor, and then I would just ask the commission is something as well.
I would like to say democracy is a beautiful thing, and we don't have it unless we vote. It protects dissent, minority, political minorities, and it's the basis of our system. And if we don't have it, we are really in serious trouble. So every school district is a major local democracy, and it's very important to preserve it. Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank you for facilitating this vote. It's extremely important. You've been somewhat patient, somewhat, you have allowed us to badger you about different things that we have to say about things. And I think overall, we would all agree that you've been fair to us all. And since this is a momentous vote, 130 years Dallas ISD has existed. So what we're voting on tonight is a momentous question, and there are a lot of silent witnesses here who've been a part of this school district that we ought to consider in this vote. But I would like to thank you for what you have done in assisting us in this process. It occurs to me that the chair also, it would be a good thing to hear your opinion before we vote.
Okay.
You don't normally do that, and you're very, give us the floor, etc., but maybe it would be a good thing if we could hear your opinion.
Well, that means a lot. Does anyone disagree with that?
No, that's the final word. before we vote.
Pardon me?
The final word. before we
Yeah,
vote,
well,
yes.
I very much appreciate what you said. Right now, the best outcome for me is that I've had a chance to meet you. I've not had a chance to meet teachers, current administrator, volunteers who run for office, volunteers who work in important nonprofits, parents, people doing heavy lifting in their own community schools, and it really is a privilege. I will say on one very personal note before I speak to the motion, this was not how I thought I would spend the first 7 months of my retirement. But I like going back to school because I have read deeply, I have listened carefully, and I have thought about where I'm prepared to come down on this tonight. And just put some points down. It will not take a long time, but just, what do you say in literature? Foreshadowing. I'm going to just tell you I'm going to vote yes and support the resolution. And I have 5 points I'd like to make. First, I thank the people who signed the petitions who caused this to happen. At first I have to say, I hadn't really thought about it. But by signing a petition, you cause an action to take place. You did not get a guaranteed result. There was no result under law guaranteed by signing the petition. It triggered a process that got us here tonight. And for that, I'm grateful. I don't impute ill will. I did not like the start of it. but I don't impute ill will for the people who triggered this, because it caused this discussion to happen, and I've come to conclude the conversation in and of itself has been extremely beneficial. I know most of you probably believe I was skeptical when that kind of point was made, but I have changed my mind, and I do think conversation is important. So I have 5 basic reasons I'd like to share with you why I support this resolution. First, I think this is a very bad piece of legislation, and the bad legislation makes for a bad predicate, and the predicate can only cause a weak and poor charter, particularly given the law's ability to amend it after the fact, even if it's a 20% vote. We cannot, as a point of law, write a charter that precludes the ability to amend it. That is not how our current ISD works. Number 2, we have been cajoled in the public media and social media about changing the election date, about governance. I have been on record when that was brought before us to ask, if you run unopposed in May and you run unopposed in November, what difference does it make? How many people know when the word is asked, wait your turn, means in Dallas, wait your turn, right? In elections, you don't have to wait your turn. And there is no difference if you're going to be unopposed in May or November. Recall or removal of trustees for nebulous reasons diminishes my voting rights, and I will never surrender my rights to vote and have it count. If I don't like who I elected, I'll unelect them in the next election. That's my right, and I don't choose to give it away easily. Good governance is a process requiring comity. C-O-M-I-T-Y. All you teachers, look it up. Comity. I know, I'm being tongue-in-cheek here, right? It's the ability for a community, for a school board, for us to be able to work together under this implied social contract that each of us has merit and each of us respects each other. Am I getting it right, Commissioner Freeman?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. And underlying that is respect. Structural reforms as proposed to us cannot fix a candidate's lack of skill or inability to work together. We, the people, elect our representatives. We, the people, can turn them out. We don't need help doing that. And to quote my favorite political philosopher, Pogo, we have met the enemy and they are us. Number 3, we have not as a community used all the legislative tools that are available to us. Those of you who are gray-haired know back in the day when SB 1 was passed for site-based management, I firmly believe that we have never thoroughly tested the limits of that to have community schools, decentralized engagement with centralized control. I want to thank Commissioner Vici who turned me on to that idea in his long oration at the January 5th meeting. It's not something I had thought about, so I will give him credit for that. And then we have SB 2, which was passed in the last session. What a marvelous bill. So I'm going to call some people out. SB 2 allows schools to be developed by teachers, principals, community people. We have heard the need for community schools. I challenge all of us, and those of you who have presented to us, form a school. There's 43 IR schools. That's 40,000 kids out of 160, whatever the numbers is. There's 43 out of 200 something campuses. Take over a school. Form your own school. And to the charters, whether it's Lumen, Terry Ford and John Fullenwider, or KIPP, bring it to the board table and make an application. Don't hide, which I don't think Lumen is doing. Don't hide. Don't ask the entire district to be a charter when you don't want to join the conversation about having your own school within SB 2. The same people who did this process supported SB 2. I want to know, for the record, where they are. Number 4. The word for me that's most important here is public. It's a good word. Public is a good word. It's about the common weal, C-O-M-M-O-N-W-E-A-L, right? The common purpose. There is nothing wrong about the common purpose and the common good and having a public institution. We are getting to the point in America where it's somehow pejorative to be in support of public. And I, for one, will not apologize for supporting that. Public conversations that are transparent conversations work to make us a better school district, a better community, and a better society. we should not exit the public space, but keep our voices engaged in making that public space better. And 5, and the most important thing for me, is I am a special interest. It is bandied about in the public as something pejorative. I am a special interest, if for no other reason, I am special. But more importantly, I am special because I am an empty nester, taxpayer, investor in the DISD, and no one can tell me I'm not part of the conversation. I am committed to remain engaged if this vote prevails and continually to make the children have the best opportunity in the DISD to succeed. And for these reasons, I'm going to support the motion and vote yes.
Thank you, Val.
I didn't lay the ground rules. Stop, no public displays of affection. All right, we want to have an orderly meeting, so no PDAs. You can share your love or not after meeting. So let us, if there's anything else, I'll take the vote. Okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, that's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor for calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. The motion carries unanimously. I will not read the entire resolution. I will read the resolution, the resolve part. Now therefore be it resolved that the Dallas ISD Home Rule School District Charter Commission determines not to develop or adopt a proposed Home Rule School District Charter. I'm going to ask Mr. Harris just to take the roll. We're going to have a called vote. Would you just call our names and we'll vote? It's going to be a recorded vote, and that vote will go in the minutes. Would you help me there?
Mr. Harris, before we call the vote, just clarification. Vote yes, what does it mean? Vote no, what does it mean?
Okay,
Voting yes, you're saying you're for not.
right. You're supporting the resolution. If you vote no, you're in opposition to it. Would you conduct the vote?
Mr. Malonzo, how do you vote?
I vote yes. I support the resolution.
I vote no.
Flores says no. Mr. Beebe?
I vote yes.
Mr. Garza?
I vote yes.
Mr. Weiss?
Yes.
Mr. Oliver?
Yes.
Mrs. Newsom?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
No.
Mr. Blackburn?
No.
Mr. Ranger?
Yes.
Mrs. Gutierrez?
No.
Ms. Sanders?
I'm getting there. Ms. Sandell?
No.
Ms. Reese?
Yes.
Ms. Alday?
Yes.
And Mr. Free?
Yes.
Would you tally the vote for us? Just for the record, would you stay with the vote is, please?
We have 5 noes and 10 yeses.
The motion prevails.
Mr. Chairman, would you consider a 5-minute recess?
Would everyone like a short break? We'll take a 5-minute recess. The time is 7 o'clock. We'll adjourn at 10 a.m.